they'll lynch you. But he did, and he laughs at
Hi, everybody. Russ on the West Ham Network. Hope you're all safe and well, my friends. I generally hope you are well. If you're new around here, thanks for joining us. If you could subscribe, it'd be lovely. If you don't, no worries. But give it a like and give it a cheeky comment, positive, negative. We appreciate all types of feedback, and we try and take as much on board as we can. Keep an eye on the channel, keep an eye on the socials. We're going to be doing some announcement, quite a big announcement in the next sort of few days about an initiative I really want all you guys to get involved in. And yeah, with some really cool guests, and like it's gonna be a really good event. So keep an eye out for that, please. Much appreciated. Today's your Hammers, not your Hammers headlines. That's later on. We're going to be talking about Vladimir Coufal. We're going to be talking about West Ham trying to buy the London Stadium. We're going to talk about our pre-season tour has been announced. I come from a land down under where women and men plunder. Do you remember Vegemite sandwich? Australia, by the way, we're going to Australia, but we'll talk about that in a bit more detail at a bit later on this afternoon. But it's your daily sort of piece, and I thought we'd talk about contracts. Contracts in two respects. One, in terms of the first teamers whose contract is expiring in the summer, and sort of what I would do. Would I keep, twist? No, would I twist or stick? On there's 5 first teamers who are out of contract, and also the main focus being there's 5 under 21 players who are out of contract in the summer. Now, West Ham's hierarchy face these transfer decisions. Obviously, we don't know what league we're in as well, so that could pertain to keep some of them if we're in the lower league, for example. Then letting some of the first teamers go if they're out of contracts. Obviously, they'll be cheaper in terms of their wages, and obviously we probably need their services a bit more. When we've gone down before, we've tended to rely on youth. I remember the Alan Pardew era. Elliot Ward, Anton Ferdinand being mainstays, Martin Noble making his breakthrough into the squad. You look like people like Jack Collison previously, and so we have, I was obviously under Big Sam, but we have turned to these younger players when we've needed them, particularly in the lower leagues, not necessarily in the top league. Whether you agree or disagree, that's a different debate. We've spoken about that lots of times, but in essence, there's 5 players who are in the under 21 squad whose contract is up. We know the academy are having a good season, particularly under 18s. We know we've got this potential for this pathway for them into the first team. They are days away from clinching the under 18s Premier League South table trophy. They need 1 point for the next 5 games, I think, like that. So that should be sewn up by the weekend. We're going to be talking to couple of the coaches from the under 18s next week in preparation for the semi-final, talking about the team in a lot more detail, so keep an eye out for that. And obviously they've got the semi-finals of the FA Youth Cup next month in April the 5th, April the 6th. It's the day after the Newcastle game. However, although the younger end are shining, it's led to, because they're shining so brightly, I think it's led to the older members of the academy leaving. We know to capitalise and on these sort of talented younger crop of players. So we've seen, Pierre Aguiar gone, we've seen Alese, Ashby, Longello, who obviously did a piece the other day in the Athletic, Will Greenidge, all departing this season from the club permanently. And that's obviously on top of the likes of people like Sonny Perkins and stuff. So it is very much, it seems they're sort of clearing the decks to give this under 18 batch a real pathway up into the 21s and then into the first team with that much competition. But as I said, there's still 5 players in the summer that West Ham have to make decisions on. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. We'll go through them and I'll give them my thoughts, and I'll be more interested to get your thoughts. This is a 2-way process. I would have done this live, but I'm going to start lugging my guts up again in a minute because I'm so full of cough at the moment. So let's start with a gentleman we signed from Celtic. Let's talk about Armstrong Okoflex. the Republic of Ireland Youth International. He spent the first half of the season on loan at Swansea, and he's on the list, so to speak. Since his loan was cut short midway through the season, he was brought back. He's hardly featured for the under-21s at all. However, we do have a 1-year option on him. For me, when it comes to Okoflex, I mean, there's certain players who are, you have an affiliation with. Anton always had an affiliation with Alese. I always had an affiliation with Harrison Ashby, and I've got an affiliation with this guy. I think when I've seen him play for the 21s, when he has played, he is exciting. He's dynamic. He reminds me a lot of Benny, but with pace. The sort of the injury to Maxwell Cornet may have suggested a reason why Okoflex was brought back in, maybe in January to cover that, but he never featured. So what was the point? He might as well just stay at Swansea. We don't know the ins and outs of his deal at Swansea, but by all accounts, he was playing well, playing a lot of games for them. Not maybe shining, but playing a lot of games. I think he hasn't had a run. I mean, he's made his first team debut in the Europa Conference League, wasn't it? Was it the FCSB he came on for, I think. But not much else. He hasn't kicked on. There is a 1-year option on him, but for me, there's a two-way process. There's an advantage for the club and an advantage for the player. For me, the club, it's always, if we can, it would be great to give him the option and have him for another year, because you never know. I think if we went down, I think we give him the other option, that's for sure. But this is the assumption that we're staying up, so this could well change in the summer. But I don't think we give him the option. I think we let him go. I think we let him go. The likes of, you got to think from the under 18s, there's plenty of guys who can come in and play that position in the 21s and potentially break into the first team. And that's the thing with this pathway. You're not going to know about this pathway, and if it's been successful, until maybe 2-3 years down the line, when the likes of Ollie Scars has got 50, 60 first team appearances under his belt. Then you can say he's truly been integrated into the first team. Someone like Ben Johnson. Ben's played over 80 times for West Ham's first team. So he's very much integrated into the West Ham first team as an academy graduate. Obviously, same too as Declan Rice, Mark Nobles. You can go through the list over recent years. Well, not so much over recent years, but over time. Having someone like, I wouldn't say someone like Divine and Balm at the moment is integrated in the first team. Yeah, he might be in the training squads. He might turn up and he might be in the squad occasionally. He might get, he's only made 2 or 3 appearances. And he just scored his first goal. He's nowhere near an established first team player as part of this pathway. So we won't know about his pathway until maybe 2-3 years down the line at the earliest, in all honesty. So do you know what? As much as it pains me, I'd let him go. Let him go. Maybe go sign for Swansea or drop down and have a real, good career. I mean, we've interviewed guys like, Hodges and Izzy. We're getting Izzy back on as well. We're going to talk about the 1999 FA Youth Cup in a bit more detail with Newts and people like that. I mean, these guys could have stayed around and maybe picked up the odd appearance, but decided that actually we want to drop down and play 200-300 games for Scunthorpe or Portsmouth or Swansea and have a really good career playing first team football. I think Okoflex is a guy who would shine in any side, really, probably in the lower leagues, or maybe going abroad. I mean, look at someone like Josh Cullen. Look what he had to do and how he dropped, and then obviously the fortunate nature of not dropped, but he moved across to Belgium, and the fortunate nature of then Vinny Company taking up the Burnley job meant that he should be a Premier League player next year. And I bloody well hope so, because he's a West Ham boy. And, I've spoken to Potsy about him. Potsy loves Josh Cullen and is still in regular contact with him because he was one of the best trainers as a kid. Obviously mad about West Ham and he will play for Burnley in the Premier League. Wrong claret and blue, but you never know, though. You never know. Maybe it could a hero's welcome for him. So I'd let Okoflex go, I think, in the summer. Let's move on and talk about Jamal Baptiste. Now, this guy was the guy. Wasn't he? He struggled for minutes this season, and we've barely seen him. He was previously high rated. He was going to be the next one coming through. I think he went something like 4 or 5 months without playing in the academy at all. And then he recently came back into the side. I think Moisey said in a press conference that he hadn't been himself, and I think he hadn't played since. And I think that was actually the most recent game. That was the Monaco game in the International Cup for the under-21s. So he went off the rails completely. We don't know whether he went off the rails, he got injured, maybe he got injured, and maybe a bit of both. But I think Moy suggested that maybe he, always not. He hasn't helped himself. Always not well at home. I mean, we can only speculate. We've seen guys like Ravel Morrison and people like that who go by the wayside, and there's no doubt he's a very talented player. Obviously, he's played for the first team already. Season before last, wasn't it? I think in the Carabao Cup at a very young age. Seemed to do all right there. Did he? I think he played in a back three with, I want to say, Elise and Ben Johnson. I may well have been wrong, but something like that. And there's still a talent there. I think, to be honest, he hasn't got an option. I don't think we've got a year option on him. So we would have to offer him a new deal. I would offer him a new deal because I think he's worth, if he's come back, obviously he might have, by the sounds of it, he's come through maybe the other side of whatever he's been dealing with and starting to play again. I think you've got now, we've got 2-3 months. He runs out. I think he runs out at the end of June. So 3 months to prove himself, and offer him another deal. Definitely, centre back is a position that we always need reinforcements. Obviously, we bought Luis Al from Sao Paulo for the under 18s. You've got people like Casey coming through as well. Some good players. We're going to talk about another one, another defender as well. I'm okay with the defenders keeping as many defenders as possible because we do bloody need them, regardless of whether Moyes plays them or not. We do need them for the numbers, that's for sure. So I would actually keep him. I'd offer him a new deal, and give him another 1 year deal and see at the end of next year, see if he's got over what he's been working on and progress. Let's talk about Levi Lang. Levi Lang, his deal runs out in the summer as well. He made his senior debut last week at the Conference League. And so that could well have boosted his chances, particularly as someone like Levi is over Jamal wasn't picked, for that conference game. For example, if they're doing a pecking order. So for me, this is a no-brainer. This is let's get him signed up. Particularly, God forbid he went down. Someone like Levi could come in and play as almost a starting centre back, in all honesty, because we would have to clear the decks, really, to be fair, in terms of players currently in the first team squad. But even not so, if we know the Premier League next year, I think he could he could come in as that fourth centre back potentially. I thought he played very well in the conference game. You didn't notice him. You didn't notice him, which is, as a defender, is a good thing. It's either, if you notice defenders, they've either made a mistake or they might have scored a goal, but it's usually they made a mistake. And he didn't. He came on, was looking for the ball, looked really confident in the ball, alongside Angelo Ogbonna. I thought he was I thought he was a good player. I thought he's a very good player, and hopefully we'll get to see a lot more of him. So for me, it's a no-brainer. We'll keep him. Who's next? Next, we have Schweier. Come on, Cammy Schweier. He's been a regular for the under-21s this season. Another player who made his senior debut in the Conference League in the FCSB game. Again, he's a versatile playmaker. But will he break? But in that position, I think we're overwhelmed a little bit in that position. So for me, defense is always an issue where we need to have as many players as possible. But midfield, I think you can be a bit more selective. He's a good player. He's strong. Quite an unusual player. in that he's a playmaker, but he has some size to him as well. But I think I just can't see him breaking into the first team. I just can't see it. It's an area which we would naturally probably buy in from. No disrespect to Schweier, but I think we naturally, because you want for that position, you need someone who's got the experience potentially. I don't know, but for me, I don't think he'll be offered a new deal, particularly with the likes of, I mean, someone like Ollie Scars, for example. We've played him left back. He plays centre mid for the under 18s. So there's options for them. You got to think next year with Deck going, people like if Deck goes in the summer, you've got Flynn there. You've still got Souček. You've still got Paqueta. Fornals can play in the middle. We'll talk about Lanzini in a bit, but I'm sure there'll be some extra bodies brought in to replace Mr. Rice as well. So he could be 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th in the pecking order. I'd rather him go and have a career and rather than sit on the bench, warm the bench up for us, in all honesty. So I wouldn't give him a new one. And lastly, another guy who played in that game was Keenan A for Forson. Very again, I always have an affiliation with him as well because he's such a small little bloke, and the fact is, he played centre mid, and he reminded me of an N'Golo Kante. Very small, diminutive, but would just such an engine. And they put him up front, and he played up front. He played 10 quite a bit. So I love the diversity, the fact he can play in a number of positions. But again, I think unfortunately in this current setup, having being small and diminutive is it doesn't work in Moyes' plan. Whether you agree or disagree, it tends to be the likes of Souček, Rice. I mean, these guys are 6 foot plus, and Lanzini doesn't get much game time. He tends to get game time when it's a European game, which is a lot slower, but still he'll have someone who's a big lad next to him. Whether you agree or disagree, it's I think it's what he does. So I don't think they'll offer him a new deal, unfortunately. They may well do, but I can't see them offering it. I mean, he tends to be used as a bit player when he comes on for the first team. I think he's made a couple of appearances. He played in the Dinamo Zagreb game last year as well. But again, came on for the last sort of 5-10 minutes, not necessarily from the start. And I think if you think about going up front, you got the likes of Callum Marshall coming through. You've got 2 or 3 of the under 18s coming through. Plus you've got Danny. Plus you've got Ogbonna. Again, I think he'll get lost in the wash, so to speak. So I wouldn't offer him a deal. Now let's talk about the first team in a bit more detail. Obviously, there's 5 first teamers who are coming to the end of their contracts. The first one being Mr. Lucas Fabianski. Now, Lucas's contract, I mean, all these 5 players in the first team, their contracts run out in the summer. Now, we do have on him a further year option. So last year, he signed a 1+1. So it was a 1-year deal, plus the clubs that have a 1-year option on him. Obviously, he broke his cheek and his eye socket and had surgery on it. He'll be back after the international break. He was training towards the end of March before the international break, so we'll expect him to come back into the side. I think with him, Ariola's still continues to have the opportunity to keep that number 1 jersey. I think for me, Fab, it makes sense to give him the option for the next year. You've got people obviously we let Darren Randolph go. The likes of Joseph Anang, Christian Heggie, who I think might go on loan next year. I think he wants to go on loan. I think that's a good move for him to get some experience. I think Joseph's been on loan a few times. I mean, Nathan Trott's still on loan in Denmark. There was talk of us looking at Meslier from Leeds. That's something I know Moyes rates him because he always talks about him in his post matches when we play Leeds. Always. It's obviously a player he likes. But I think Fabianski, you keep him. I think you keep him with that 1-year option. I mean, he'll turn 39. No, he's 30. He'll be 39 next month. 38 next month. So he'll be 39 next year. I think you offer him a 1-year deal. You give it to him. and he may well retire at the end of next year. But I think it's worth keeping him for the extra year as number 2. And then Areola can continue his stint as the first team. And in the same way that Areola is our cup goalkeeper, Fabianski will be our cup keeper next year. I think the injury has helped move that transition on a bit quicker, which we thought was going to happen right at the beginning of the year, but it didn't. So I would give Mr. Fabianski another year. Who's next? Who's next on my list? Let's have a look. Angelo Ogbonna. We spoke about centre halves, and I said how I want to keep loads of centre halves. Now, I think he surprised us all this year. We never assumed he was going to be back playing football to the level he has been, and to the amount of games, really, considering he came back from that horrific injury. I don't know why my voice went up, down like horrific injury, but that's what it was. His contract runs out in the summer. He has said that he wants to retire. Basically, he wants West Ham to be his last club. Now, obviously, we gave him the 1-year contract, partly because he spent the whole of last year being injured, pretty much from that sort of. It was that Liverpool game, wasn't it? He went off, and then basically our whole season went after that. In all honesty, we didn't play well since then. So I think, and he's been a fantastic servant. I mean, a lot of people said, it'd be great to have him as a coach, quite possibly. I think he may well want to go back to Italy. There was obviously a couple of clubs sniffing around for him in January, but he said he didn't want to go to another club. He wants to finish his career at West Ham. We'll see. Like a fine wine, he's improved. He's improved, but I think this year's shown me at times that that there comes a point where it does fall off. I mean, he's 30, be 35 at the end of this season, 36. I think with the likes of Zuma, Iged, the likes of Luizao, the likes of someone like Levi Lang, Baptiste, I don't know whether I'd offer him a new deal. And I can't remember if I have offered him a new deal. My thing to be honest, what have I offered? Have I offered him a new deal? No, I haven't offered him a new deal. So I might change that and offer him a new deal. I'm such a sucker for him. I just think he's a lovely bloke as well. And actually, no, ignore that. I'm going to offer him a new deal. Just because I think a 1-year extension, and then that gives someone like Luizao another year to break through. And then also someone like Casey coming through. He's going to be a good centre off for us as well. That gives him another year in terms of maybe under 21s, and then the pathway can continue. And also, then we can see how well Baptiste has got over whatever he's been going through the last 5 months. So, yeah, let's give him a new deal. Let's give him a new deal. Let's talk about Aaron Cresswell, the man with the magic hat. Again, his contract runs out at the end of the season. No announcement about any extension yet. He's obviously our vice captain, and I think it's time. To say goodbye. I think it is. Obviously, we signed him 2015, wasn't it? Something like that. 2014, 2015. From Ipswich. Marauding, fast paced, really, quick, aggressively attacking left back. It's fullback's now a young man's game. You don't get a Gary Neville type fullback now he's into his mid 30s, still playing to a high standard. You don't get that anymore now. Game's moved on, and I think it's Cresswell's time to probably leave. I wouldn't offer him a new contract. There's no disrespect to him as a person, but I just think, in terms of the club, you've got someone, and again, I've mentioned him about 5 times. You've got someone, Ollie Scarl, so you can play left wing back or left back. I think Emerson's come in and played well as a left wing back, but even now he's been playing as a left back and being picked above Aaron Cresswell. The fact that Tilo Kehra's been picked ahead of him at left back, the fact that Ben Johnson's been picked ahead of him at left back. I think Ben Johnson is probably going to be our first choice left back maybe next season. Or maybe we might, if we sell Declan Rice, use some of that money to get a couple of fullbacks in. Someone like, I don't know, Grimaldo from Benfica on a free transfer, or Rafael Guerrero from, or Souza, Borna Souza, someone like that would be amazing on the left back position. And I think, I just don't think I think Cresswell's time is up. So unfortunately, I wouldn't offer him a new deal either. Who's next? Who's next? Lanzini. Here we go. Happy Hammerette. You're not going to be happy with me, Hammerette. That's for sure. Apparently, we have a 2-year option on him. We have a 2-year option. His contract runs out this year, and we have a 2-year option on his deal. I don't think we're going to take it. He's been great. I mean, he's started every Europa League conference game for us this season. I think, and I've said this several times to Anton as well, the European football style, pace suits him. It suits him a slower pace of the game. And he doesn't get the Premier League. He gets it occasionally. And I mean, Anton's like, it gives him something to offer. I don't think he would. I don't think he's going to get over. He's never going to start ahead of the likes of Paqueta. Whether you agree or disagree, in reality, he's never going to start ahead of the likes of Souček or Paqueta. I think he's and again for his progression, for his career, for his lifestyle, his personal life. Obviously, he's just had a kid. The reports to believe he wants to go back to River Plate. They were sniffing around for him, maybe as an early release in January for him, but the club apparently rejected that. So I think he'll go in the summer. I think he'll go in the summer. We won't offer him. We won't take up the 2-year option. I mean, he's 30 now. If we took up the 2-year option, he'd be 32. I've done the maths. And would that give him much time to go back to River Plate? Maybe play a season or two, maybe. But if he went now, he could probably play another 3 or 4 seasons in the Argentinian league potentially as well, and then set up home with his family back in Argentina potentially. So sorry, Happy Emirate, I haven't given him a new contract. And lastly, the man who's causing all the furore, Vladimir Coufal. We'll talk about Vlad and the Czech Republic later on at Hammers Headlines, so keep an eye out for that. It's very interesting. We have a 2-year option on Vlad. He's 30. And I'm talking about, and I've just completely contradicted myself because when I said something's not a young man's game, and he'll be, if we exercise that 2-year deal, he'll be 32. Again, I've done the maths. By the time that contract runs out. But for me, it would make sense to keep him. He had a real dip in form for the last year, I reckon. And in the last, probably since the beginning of the year, maybe slightly before the World Cup break, we started to see the old Vlad again. He is a good player. He's a battler. He's a warhorse, and he's someone you need when you want. When you're in the trenches, I would want Vladimir Coufal next to me because he would die for you. Do you know what I mean? He's got that type of grit which we've lost, particularly when Craig Dawson left and Mark Noble. We lost that sort of just throw your body on the line type thing, and Vlad has it. And if by doing something to show that it reignites the crowd, it reignites the players, I'd probably keep him and offer him a new deal. Now, the talk is that by Leverkusen are looking at him as a replacement for their outgoing fullback in the summer. So even more so, I'd keep him because I'd rather keep him and then sell him for 7 or 8 million quid to buy Leverkusen rather than necessarily on a free transfer, which will cost us F all. But that's just me being a bit snidey as per usual. So I would actually offer him a new deal. I'd offer him a new deal, and that's my view. But I want to hear your views. Go back. Okoflex. Levi Lang, Baptiste, Schweier. Forzen, Fabianski, Cresswell, Lanzini, Ogbonna, and Coufal. Which would you offer a new deal to? Which ones wouldn't you offer a new deal to? I'd be really interested to see. And obviously, the premise is the assumption is we're staying in the Premier League for this. Or if you're really that bored, do 2 lists. Do a list if we're in the Premier League, a list if we're in the Championship, because I think that could be quite different, to be honest. But I'll be interested to know. We've got Hammers headlines tonight, and so keep an eye out on the channel for all the exciting stuff we've got coming up next week. And that's it, my friends. Take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble. Keep the faith, my friends. Come on, you irons. And I'll see you guys very, very soon. Ta-ta. Bye-bye.